I'm just going back into ESS BIZTOOLS to refer you to some information on Enterprise Connect, because that was our feature commentary in today's webinar on ESS BIZGrants, is to look at the Enterprise Connect grants. If you have any questions, can you type them in and in webinar terminology raise your hand, and I'll answer the questions a little bit later in the webinar. I will open up the communication channels a little bit later on. It was a bit noisy there then, and as other people come on, it gets very difficult to hear. But we'll do that, so if you want to talk to me about any particular questions to do with BIZGrants, you can do so. Government grants is a very interesting area, of course. There's hundreds of government grants, but our feature today in this webinar is to have an overview of the Enterprise Connect grants. Enterprise Connect has been an organisation that's probably had a bit of a question mark over it for the last 4 months, because whilst the organisation was continuing to interview and conduct business reviews for potential clients, there seemed to be a problem in having new funding agreements entered into with the approval of the Federal Treasury. I received an email yesterday, though, which indicated that the system is now again in full swing, and that's fantastic. And to give you an idea how much deal flow is going through Enterprise Connect, the email I received was from a business advisor for Enterprise Connect who is based in Townsville, and she indicated that she had 300 applications in the system which are now going through and being funded. So the question I put to most accountancy firms around Australia, who I don't know, some of them I do know that are doing a significant amount of work in the Enterprise Connect area, is how many Enterprise Connect applications have you got in the system at present? Because some accountancy businesses are really getting some significant benefits for their clients by being very proactive in seeking out the clients that might be eligible for these grants. They're not a huge amount of money, but they can really assist a business to undertake some tasks. And there's a fair bit of the work that can be done under the Enterprise Connect funding that accountants can perform. So it might be business plans, strategic plans, mentoring the management team, human resources plans, waste management reviews, risk management, manuals prepared for the business. I'll just get rid of that. They're some of the activities that I've undertaken under Enterprise Connect, just to give you some idea. Obviously there's a whole range of other things, like having an appropriately qualified consultant review your client's workshop and redesign it so as to be more efficient, to stop them walking from one end of the workshop to the other to get a spanner, for argument's sake. And obviously there's work in workplace health and safety areas, in risk management, computer programming. Enterprise Connect will basically fund anything that is believed by the business advisor from Enterprise Connect that it will assist the business's performance. So on the screen you have a list of the industries that Enterprise Connect applies to, and these industry definitions are fairly widely interpreted. So for argument's sake, a consultant who's working within the manufacturing industry to earn 50% or more of their income, so it could be a design type business, an architectural firm, engineering consulting firm. They would deem to be manufacturing, and as long as they meet the requirements, which are that the applicant has to be a company or a corporate trustee acting for a trustee, for a trust, not trustee, for a corporate trustee acting for a trust, then, and meet these minimum turnover levels, then they could well be eligible for this grant support, which is up to $20,000 on a 50% basis. So it's covering manufacturing, clean technology, all aspects of the resources industry. So that's mining, oil and gas. Creative industries, which covers about 15 other industries from radio, television, media, journalism, right through. Defence is the defence industry, contractors. There are thousands of those around Australia who are working in all sorts of electronics, computers, repairs and maintenance of tanks and huge army vehicles that I know one business does. The tourism sector, a limited version of tourism, but it covers a fair bit: tourist accommodation, tourist attraction, local food and beverage tasting experiences, operation of tours, travel agency services. So it covers a fair bit. Minimum turnover $1 million, so if you've got companies in that sort of area. Remote industries, now that's any type of business, and I'll come back to that in a moment if I can. Publishing and printing industries, note the difference. Printing has to have a minimum turnover of $1.5 million. Publishing has to have a minimum turnover of only $1 million. ICT type businesses, transport, freight and logistics. Professional services doesn't cover all what might be called professional services. It tends to be scientific research areas, but it includes architectural, engineering and computer services. So there's a fairly wide definition, and food and beverage manufacturing industries. So they're the industries that this support applies to, and they're the minimum turnovers or expenditures. So this is a bit of a strange grant process. You can qualify if you have spent these amount of monies on expenditure. So you might have very little turnover. So that expenditure might have been spent on research and development, a pilot plant, test runs and what have you. That type of business could qualify. But in the main, most people are qualifying under the minimum turnover rules. If the business happens to be situated in a remote or very remote location, which is about 85% of the Australian land mass, there are a couple of very important changes. Number one, they can be any type of business entity. So it can be a sole trader, a trust, a partnership, Aboriginal organisation, any type of organisation, as long as they have a minimum turnover of $750,000. So there are some fairly big businesses in some of these remote location areas, such as Alice Springs, Mount Isa, Tennant Creek, that are considered to be remote businesses. So, and it's any type of business. So an accountancy business in Alice Springs, as long as they've got a turnover over $750,000, could receive this type of grant. There's just a couple of other things that I just want to raise. We can also have a group application. So this is where you put a network of businesses together. They have to have some sort of similarity or business connection. So they may be a network. And this is a great marketing tool, I think, for accountants to be talking to a number of businesses in an area. And one of the ones that comes to my mind fairly quickly is in this tourism sector. Could a group of these people be brought together to form a network? Their minimum turnover only has to be $500,000. The minimum turnover of the group has to be $2 million. And we have these group structures then for the other type of industry. So in manufacturing, $1 million worth of minimum turnover for a member, the minimum turnover for the group, $4 million. So in one of these cases where the minimum turnover is $1 million and they satisfy the grouping requirements, each member of the group then is able to source $20,000 in grant from Enterprise Connect. So if there's 4 of them, there's $80,000. They've got to match that. That's another $80,000. There's $160,000 in a pool to do some work. Now, that work needs to be identified by the case manager from Enterprise Connect when he or she has done the initial assessment, and that will identify the work to be done, which could be a computer program to coordinate their networked operations. Could be a business plan, some market research, some marketing activities. When you get a group that size, in most instances there's a potential for a project management role, and that's a role that an accountancy business might fulfill to keep these businesses going together. Some of these businesses, of course, might not be your normal clients. So there's the possibility of expanding your services in this business advisory services area by being very proactive in trying to get groups formed. There is, seeing today's feature is on the Enterprise Connect grants. We'll just discuss quickly what both of the grants are. There's the Tailored Advisory Services Grant, which is the one that I've been referring to, and that's the official name of it. So the Enterprise Connect Business Advisor undertakes an initial review of the business. That is free. That can take up to 3 days. Normally it's only about 1 day. Your client needs to be available or delegate someone to be available to assist the business advisor to conduct that review. Those business advisors, there's 92 of them around Australia, have all been recruited from private enterprise, and their role is to use some software which they utilize to identify the key characteristics of your business, where possible to compare them to world's best practice, and to identify with the client and your input, if you wish, what areas they need to improve on that they might be able to benefit by engaging external consultants to assist them. They then submit that report to their superiors. Normally those reports are given the green light to proceed within a very short period. I've known of some to be approved in less than 1 hour. In most cases it's a couple of days, but there has been a hold-up, as I've indicated a little earlier, for the last 2 or 3 months, but that's now overcome apparently, and that's great. So the type of activities are listed there. There's some of the areas that have been funded to give you an idea of what you might be able to suggest to your clients. The other grant is a Researchers in Business grant. This can be an amount of up to $50,000 to a maximum of, or based on a formula of 50% of salary costs, and this can range from a period from 2 to 12 months. The whole idea here is to encourage businesses to engage university graduates from research organizations or universities to assist them to implement a particular technical strategy within a business. So the government was trying to achieve a degree of small businesses having a better understanding of the services that a university graduate, university or a training organisation could make available to them, and that's the reason this grant's been introduced, and it can cover a wide area. There's also a program called the Continuous Improvement Program. We do have a separate paper on this, but I'll just mention it now that we're here. to finish the overview of the Enterprise Connect. Continuous improvement program is available for a business that has already gone through a tailored advisory process, and within 12 months they have implemented the recommendations that were contained in the initial report. They can go back and make a further application and seek a further grant of $20,000. They have to match it, of course, so they've got $40,000 to do some further development of the processes or systems that were put in place a year ago, so as to add further value to the business. So that's the overview of the continuous improvement program that is part of the Enterprise Connect program. So hopefully that's given you an overview of how that works. And we'll now go back to the website on ESS BIZGrants. When you first go to the website, you can view the testimonial that we received from David Smith. David Smith, who until recently was the Managing Director of Smith Inc. 2020. He's now taken on a corporate role as well. But David knew that I was very interested in government grants and obviously knew about ESS BIZTOOLS, and suggested to us about 4 years ago that his observation was that when he was interviewing clients of accountancy businesses, and he was doing that because he was consulting to a business, an aggregator that was wanting to buy some accountancy businesses, that when he talked to the clients, one of the comments that he's receiving back was that the clients were critical of accountants for not keeping them aware of government grants that they might have been eligible to apply for. So David suggested to me that we could utilise the knowledge that we'd already developed within ESS BIZTOOLS on government grants, because we'd written papers on many of them, and I'd consulted to the Oz industry for a major grant, COMET, Commercialising Emerging Technology, that we should write a program. So that's where all this started from, and we developed the product from there. So there are some summaries on how the system works that you can view as a person going to the website. Somewhere or other we got on the subscription pricing then, but I was going to mention this later on, but I'll mention it now that we're on it. The subscription is $450 plus GST for the 12 months 24/7 access. There is some commentary on how the system works that you can read to get an understanding of what the system's about, but basically it works on a client profile. If we look at what's included in a client profile, and what I'm showing you now is the system that obviously exists at present, but we are commencing with a new website in about 2 weeks' time, which incorporates some changes, and I'll mention the changes as I go through here. You need to insert the name of your client. We are using cloud technology, so if you wish you can use a client number. You need to identify what type of entity the business belongs to. All of those entities can receive some types of government grants, but there's no doubt that the major grant is for companies. We've asked questions, do you export? Because if your client exports, we will then be informing you about the export grants that are available. Same logic applies to do you import? Number of employees is important because there are some grants that have minimum numbers of employees and maximum number of employees, so we need to know that. Do you have an ABN? If you answer no to that, you will not be offered any grants because this system has been prepared on the basis that it's a system for small, medium enterprises, not other type of businesses like charities and not-for-profits, so they need an ABN. The years you've been operating in business is also important because a number of grants, and in particular that Enterprise Connect that we just did the feature overview on, you have to have been in business for 3 years to apply for that. I forgot to mention that when we did the overview. And there are a number of state and territory government grants that are imposing periods of years in business. Turnover is very important. Obviously in research and development we have the $20 million change between the 45% rebate and the 40% non-payable rebate at that stage. But there are turnover limits in a number of other grants. Annual expenditure, that relates to the Enterprise Connect that we talked about a little bit earlier. In actual practice, we've found that less than 1% of Enterprise Connect grants have been approved under this rule of annual expenditure. So in our new version, we're not highlighting it as much. We are not going to have this specific question because it does cause a few concerns. We're going to mention it in the material on that grant, but not highlighted as much. The businesses need to be registered for GST. It's the same as what we talked about, the ABN. This product or program is for small businesses. Are you tax exempt? The same logic applies. If you answer yes, the system won't show you any grants because all these grants are for tax-paying businesses or businesses that potentially would pay tax. Are you involved in research and development? It's not going to disadvantage you if you answer no, but if you answer yes, it is our logic to look at offering some government grants that do require research and development, or it's a fair assumption that there would have been research and development undertaken, and that basically relates to the Commercialisation Australia grants. They're the very large ones that small businesses are very eligible to apply for. Companies with turnovers under $10 million, but they can have no dollars if that's the situation. In other words, a complete new startup. Are there concerns about the financial vulnerability of the business? This question is basically framed from a government official's point of view. They don't like approving any type of business for a government grant and then finding out that very shortly thereafter there was a financial problem in the business. So if you answer yes, you won't be shown any grants for that particular client. So the fact that the debtors ledger's got 60 days outstanding on the average debtors balance is not the sort of financial concern that we're looking for. From a bureaucrat's point of view, they're more concerned that a liquidator is about to be appointed or a receiver is about to be appointed. We can't go any further here unless we put some actual data in. So I'm going to put some, or go to a partly completed, these are all trial runs that we've had. I had one yesterday. Well, I thought I did, but it's gone. We'll go to this one though. It's a business we called, a hypothetical business we called Yarra Software. So we'll just go back so you get the feeling. Now this is a partnership. They do some exporting. They don't do importing. They've got 10 people. They've been in business for 12 years. They had turnover of $2.4 million. and they're registered for GST. They don't do research and development, so we'll see what this type of business might be able to offer. We've already put in the address details, and that the postcode determined the location type. The financial details are just repeated back to us. The key thing that then had to be done was to enter in the business details, and this is in accordance with the Australian and New Zealand industrial classification. So we had looked at this and decided they were a service provider. This particular business is in more than one industry, so you're able to enter in more than one industry, because this is potentially opening up other grant opportunities, and those other industries are selected from the 17 industry classifications as contained within the Australian and New Zealand industrial classifications. If you're unsure, we have a direct link to the ANZIC details, so you can go onto the contents and work your way through the classifications if you wish. In the new version of ESS BIZTOOLS, we've decided to change that part of the system so that you'll be invited to insert the tax office version of the Australian and New Zealand industrial classification, the Australian tax number. And if you're in doubt, you'll be able to, we'll have a direct link to that list that the tax office has prepared. It's basically the same as the Bureau of Statistics list, only it has one extra digit, and it is updated more regularly, because obviously the Bureau of Statistics information is only updated after every census. And we're hopeful that that will help you clearly identify the industry type that your client belongs to. We've gone through and looked at every grant and have allocated the Australian and New Zealand industrial classifications, tax office version, that applies to them, so as to try to narrow down exactly which grant your client might be eligible for. So if we went further now and we went to search, we are going to look at the grants that might be available for this business. Now, I'd been playing with this one previously, so we had identified previously that some of the grants could have been eligible. So normally what you would do is, when you go on to pending, this probably wasn't the best one to select when I was looking to which one to come on to, there were 5 grants that were offered there. We've already gone through and decided that we might be potentially eligible for some of them. So just to give you a run through how that works, when it was being reviewed, the apprenticeship incentives, the skill-based apprenticeship, was identified as something the client might be eligible for or interested in. So if you click on, you get a funding details. You can get the grant details first of all, so it's telling you what the payments would be to engage in an apprentice or a trainee. The funding details there basically repeat the funding. If you want to go to the grant toolkit, it gives you the ability to do some reading about the particular paper or particular subject by going to a paper. And there's the paper out of ESS BIZTOOLS, which explains how the apprenticeship scheme operates. So if you wanted to bring yourself up to speed, as it were, by doing some pre-reading before you talk to your client, there is a paper there to assist you to do that. And then there is some additional criteria. Now, in a previous demonstration, we've already answered that, but there are questions. we try to limit the questions, but in some of the more complicated grants there can be up to 8 separate questions that need to be answered. Not all the correct answers are yes. Some of them the correct answer is no. Is the employer proposing to employ and endorse skill-based apprentice level 3 or 4? So we've answered yes to that, and that is indicated that we're eligible. Let me show you. If we go back there and we change the answer, we say no, we're not going to do that. What the system would then say is you were ineligible for that particular grant. But on the basis that we want to keep it as yes, we'll go back and answer yes again. The system will indicate that we are eligible. If you wanted to apply now, you could click on and get that URL to the apprenticeship authorities. If you clicked onto that, what they then direct you to is, once you enter your postcode, they will then direct you to the apprenticeship organisation that's been approved to operate in your area, and there are 156 of those organisations around Australia. If we go back to results, this grant was, and we can then go to potentially eligible. We have these grants, and some of them of course were just grants that we identified as we were working through on a previous example. If you said, yeah, that's okay, I now want to have a look at what I'm going to tell the client, the system produces a report which would have your name there, not ESS BIZTOOLS, would be the name of your accountancy business, obviously the name of your client. It gives you a synopsis of the grant and tells you a bit about it. You could produce the paper from the system that gives further details. So you've got the basis of having a conversation with your client to talk to them about the grants that are available. A software sort of programming business like this wasn't the best example, but it gives you some idea of how this might work. Incidentally, if you go think about what the profile information that we put in to the system, we said that this business was a partnership with a turnover of 2.4 million and that they were doing work in the manufacturing industry. Now the system hasn't identified any Enterprise Connect grants, but if they had been a company with that sort of turnover and a service provider working in the manufacturing industry, they would have been offered, or you would have been offered, the opportunity of looking at some of the Enterprise Connect grants for the manufacturing industry. It then would have asked whether approximately 50% of the fee income for the computer consultancy business was coming from the manufacturing industry. And if it was, they could have proceeded to apply for one of the Enterprise Connect grants. So what our system is trying to do, obviously because they were only a partnership, they have got a very restricted number of grants that are going to be offered to them in their instance. There are some there, but so there's the report that you would submit to your client. Now I'm going to, I haven't got any questions in yet. I hope it's not too noisy, but I'm just going to open up the, I've unmuted you all now, I think. If anyone's got any question, can you please ask me? And it's getting very noisy. So what we might do is just click all them off again. So that's the webinar for today. Hopefully that's given you a clear understanding of how ESS BIZGrants operates. The feature today was looking at the Enterprise Connect grant, so hopefully you've got a better idea of how that operates. ESS BIZGrants is available on a 12-month subscription. You receive a username and a password It can be used by anyone within your office. That username and password gives you 24/7 access. You benefit by any new grants that we add to the system. Obviously, they're within the system. And as I said a little earlier, our system's been completely changed, or it's been updated. In about 2 weeks' time, we'll be going live with our new website, which continues on the same theme as what we've done. We just think it's streamlining a little bit, especially in the identification of business and industry classifications by using the Australian-New Zealand industrial number. Our subscription is $495, including GST. We look forward to hearing from you. If you have any subsequent questions that you think about, please send us an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. Incidentally, if you are a gold subscriber within ESS BizTools, you receive this subscription to ESS BIZGrants as part of your gold subscription. So if you're thinking of that, you'll get this subscription as part of your ESS BizTools subscription. Thank you very much for participating in this webinar. We look forward to hearing from you, and we would really like to welcome you all as subscriber members of ESS BizGrants. Thank you very much, and have an enjoyable day for the balance of it. Thank you. Bye-bye.